Good afternoon. I'm Victoria Wright. I'm the Marketing and Outreach Coordinator for the Department of Procurement Services. This workshop is how to become certified. So everybody's here for how to become certified? Okay. Thank you for coming today. Everyone should have signed in at the table and taken the handouts. We have the actual hard copy, Schedule A, the help text, and the document checklist, DPS alert card, and the actual evaluation, which I will collect at the end of the workshop. We do recommend that vendors sign up for DPS alerts if you don't already receive them. We send out our bid opportunity list every Monday with the contracts that are actually available to bid. I have to let you know that this room is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. So all of our workshops now can be seen from YouTube. And if you are watching from YouTube, you can download the PowerPoint presentation, and you all can also do that once you get home. All the PowerPoint presentations are on the DPS website under Events and Outreach. So basically, the camera is on the speaker only. You cannot be seen in the YouTube video. We will take questions at the end, and so I'll be in the room, and Francisco will be in the room to answer questions. And the workshop will end properly at 3:30. So again, thank you. 3, I'm sorry, Francisco's right. This one ends at 3 because we have the next one that's doing business with the City of Chicago, so we welcome you to stay for that one as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Francisco. He is actually a certification officer, and he's going to handle the rest of the class.
Thank you for coming as well. So today we're going to go over the city certification programs, which includes minority business enterprise, women business enterprise, business enterprise for people with disabilities, and we're also going to touch on BEPD and ACDBE, which are federal programs that the city certifies from. Okay. So we're in the right place. Okay, so first of all, we want to do a department overview, who we are and what we do. The Department of Procurement Services is the contracting authority for procurement of goods and services of the City of Chicago. We work together with, as a team and with our customers to guarantee an open, fair, and timely process by establishing communication and enforcing superior business practices. What we do. DPS is committed to providing information, resources, and tools to assist you in your efforts to compete in City of Chicago contracting opportunities. We also accept new applications for certification. We process and accept annual recertifications, which are known as no change affidavits, and accept 5-year recertifications, which is a process which is a little bit longer and just pretty much verifies that everything you had in your original application still hasn't changed. So it's more of an in-depth reevaluation of your certification. We also contract compliance with negotiated contractual MWBBE participation goals. We set standards for contract participation for MWBEs as well as BBEs and ACDBEs. We assist vendors through our website, www. So, I'm sorry, give me one second. Okay, so in addition, we assist vendors through our website, which is www.cityofchicago.org/procurement and chicago.mwbbe.com. Chicago.mwbbe.com is the website that you're going to be using for certification. This is where you're going to fill out any type of certification applications that you have on. Okay. there are 5 programs that we, certify in, and MBE, WB, BEPD, DBE, ACDBE. MBE is a minority-owned business enterprise. WBE, women-owned business enterprise. BEPD, businesses owned by people with disabilities. DBE is a disadvantaged business enterprise. ACDBE, airport concessions, disadvantaged business enterprise. DBE and ACDBE are federal programs that are regulated by federal legislation. So now we're going to talk about the benefits of certification. It provides visibility. Once you're certified, your firm is listed in a directory that is accessible to the general public. The good thing about this is a lot of prime contractors will go into our directory to look for firms that do the type of work that they're looking for. So you'll be listed there. There are also minority, women, and disadvantaged persons goals in City of Chicago projects, as well as projects offered by sister agencies in which a City of Chicago certification is recognized by these agencies and private firms. So a good example of this is CPS. So if you're seeking a contract with CPS and they have participation goals by a minority woman-owned business, they will accept our certification, as well as water reclamation. We have the CHA, the Housing Authority. So this is the sister agencies that we're referring to. The City of Chicago has a target market program which provides exclusive bidding to certified minority and women-owned business enterprises. This allows certified businesses to take 100% of the pie because there are no subcontractor goals associated with these projects. So the City of Chicago does make a point to, whenever they have an opportunity to give contracts to certified firms and certified firms alone, to take advantage of those opportunities for the well-being of our small businesses. Okay. Do you qualify? Qualifying groups for, and this is in general for all of our programs, are you African American, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, a woman, a person with disabilities, or other individuals who can prove social and economic disadvantage. What's being said there is that we understand that people who may consider themselves as social and economically disadvantaged, that may not necessarily fit into any of these groups, they can submit an application and then submit an affidavit of social disadvantage, where they get the opportunity to present why they feel that they're socially or economically disadvantaged. And then we have a board that reviews these applications that decides whether you do or do not qualify for the program. There's also a local business incentive or qualification that needs to be met in order to be certified. For the City of Chicago certifications, you must have the majority of your full-time workforce located in Cook County, DuPage County, Kane County, Lake County, McHenry County, or Will County. If the majority of your workforce is outside of these 6 counties, you will not qualify for a local business requirement for certification. Now, for DBE and ACDBE, you could be located anywhere in the state of Illinois. Now, one of the next requirements is that the firm has to be owned, 51% owned, controlled, and managed by a minority woman or persons with disability, or socially or economically disadvantaged individual. Another one of the requirements is that you must not be an established business. By established business, we define this as your gross receipts must not exceed $37.3 million average over 3 years for non-construction firms. For construction firms, they're subject to SBA size standards. DBE has a different gross receipt standard, which is 22.4, or SBA size limits for the firm's primary line of business, whichever is higher. Oh, I'm sorry, whichever is lower, not higher. ACDBE must not exceed 52.47 million for most of the firms. Some exceptions do apply, but those are very rare. Okay, the application process. How do you apply for certification? You can submit a hard copy or electronic application, but just so you know, beginning January 1st of 2016, we will no longer accept hard copies unless there is a very, very good reason why you cannot submit electronically. Electronic applications will be filled out at chicago.mwdbe.com, and you must submit a $250 money order or cashier's check for any M and WBE certification. The DBE, ACDBE, and BEPD is free of charge. But you also have to remember that when you submit an application, you have to submit all of the documents. This is very, very important, and it could be misleading to business owners, okay? Because you submit something online or in hard form or in hard copy does not necessarily mean you submitted an application. It has to be a complete application. What we need from you, part of the application process, you're going to have to give us your contact information, the type of certification you are seeking. That is important too. You know, a lot of times we have, especially when you have a business owner who qualifies for more than one, sometimes they'll presume that the certification officer is going to choose everything they qualify for. We cannot do that. You guys have to tell us what you're applying for. So if you're applying for both an M and a W, you have to mark that you're applying for minority and women-owned. Or if you're applying for women-owned and disadvantaged, then you have to be very specific and make sure you fill that out. BEPD requires a Schedule G, which is just an additional part of the application. We're going to require ownership information. We need to know how you started your business. We're going to need your operating agreement, bylaws, et cetera, if you're a sole proprietor. Just all your business ownership information, business information on file. We're going to need all of your employee information, financial information, licenses for the applicant and the business, depending on what kind of work you do. We're going to need to know the experience of by submitting a resume, you know, submitting a list of professional associations that you're with, listing of all equipment and leases that you have for your business. This is going to help us determine your experience in the industry that you're applying for. Contract information. This is very, very important. Contract information is the easiest way for a certification officer to validate whether you can do the job or not. Okay? You can submit pending contracts, contracts that you have done in the past 2 years, invoices, all purchase orders. This again helps certification officers determine whether you are capable of doing the work or not. This is a big part of certification. Anyone that's applying for certification, the majority owner and qualifying member of this organization needs to demonstrate that they can perform the work without any dependency to anyone else. Okay, this is very, very important when it comes to applying for certification. So again, ownership information. We understand that there's various ways to form your company, and we accept almost all of them. A sole proprietor, typically when you're the owner and just you. There has no legal existence apart from the person, him or herself. You must submit your assumed name certificate to prove that you are a legal entity at that point. General partnership, which is two or more people go into business together without any formalities. Again, for that, we're going to need a partnership agreement. Limited partnership. The limited partnerships are more like stakeholders in a corporation. They are not liable for the debt beyond their own contribution. And the assumed name certificate or certificate of limited partnership is going to be needed in that type of formation. Ownership information. So for a corporation is treated as an entity completely separate from its shareholders. It allows others to invest in the business without being liable for debts of the business. Now, when you have a corporation, this is where you're going to have to provide a lot of information. You're going to have to provide, you're going to have to be sure that your business is in good standing with the state of Illinois, okay? That you file your annual reports every year, that you pay all your taxes, things like that. We're going to need your articles of incorporation, certificate of incorporation as well, bylaws, copies of all stock certificates that are issued front and back, and the minutes of your meeting minutes. Then we have an LLC, partnership that has a managing member or partner. If you have an LLC, you're going to have to provide an operating agreement between you and your partners. I know that there's sometimes, for tax purposes, people create a sole member partnership. It's still good to have an operating agreement, even though technically it's not necessary in the eye of the law. But for certification purposes, we would prefer that you submit one, even if you're a sole member in an LLC. Okay? Now, when it comes to certification, oh man, I forgot to follow up with this. I'm sorry about that. Okay, when it comes to certification, there are some codes and some industries that go a little bit further. And one of the most one of the most analyzed certifications is when you're trying to seek certification as a supplier. Okay. Very, very, very important if you're seeking certification as a supplier to take note of everything I'm going to say now. A supplier must be a regular dealer, which is a firm that owns, operates, and maintains a store, warehouse, or other establishment in which materials, supplies, articles, or equipment are bought, kept in stock, and regularly sold or leased to the public in the usual course of business. So by this, a supplier, in sense, is someone that has an inventory, right? That a customer will call them and tell them, I need XYZ by tomorrow. We go into our inventory, we take it out, we ship it to the customer. That's what a supplier is. Now, if you're a distributor, that's a firm operating as a distributor are identified as having a direct relationship with the manufacturer to distribute its goods and products within its specific territory or region. The goods and or products are not available or sold to the general public. So a distributor, this is how we define what a distributor is. Now, this is a broker. Firms acting as a broker are not eligible for certification as an MBE or WB. So if you're a broker, you cannot apply for minority or women-owned business enterprise. A person or entity that fills orders by purchasing or receiving supplies from a third-party supplier rather than out of its own existing inventory and provides no substantial service other than acting as a conduit between his or her supplier and his or her customer is a broker. this is one of the biggest reasons why people would get denied if they're applying for certification. So let's say, for example, I'm a supplier of construction material, and I get an order from one of my customers who's asking me for electrical equipment, and I call my supplier and I say, hey, I want this order. Now deliver it directly to my customer, drop ship it, right? You'll be automatically denied because you're working as a broker. It's, you know, this is a very, very a common occurrence, and you know, it's a good business to have. Now, if you're a broker, you can still be certified as a PD and ACDBE. Okay? Give me one second. Okay, sounds good. All right. Okay. So now we're going to talk about after the application is submitted. And this is going to save you a million phone calls. Once you submit the application, the process can take approximately 60 to 90 days from the day we receive all documents. That's why earlier it was important that I mentioned, make sure you provide us with a list or all the required and mandatory documents. Very, very important. Your application is checked to make sure that all documents are there, but even though it's checked by our intake department, once the certification officer receives it, they do a preliminary check to see that everything is there. Sometimes there might be different required documents because of the industry, or because of the formation of your company, or because of your ownership structure. There's a lot of reasons why there might be additional documents that in the intake process, it may seem like it's a complete application, but indeed it's not, okay? And all documents are thoroughly audited, and you, depending on the industry that you're applying for, you may receive a site visit. During the site visit, either the certification officer or our field analyst will come and conduct the site visit to take a look and observe and ask you questions of your day-to-day operation, okay? If approved, your certification will be valid for 5 years. If approved, your certification will be valid for 5 years. Now, in the past, the city of Chicago would provide a new letter every single year saying that you're certified. Nowadays, we give you a 5-year letter if your initial approval, a certification, and that letter is valid until your 5-year renewal period. Okay, so it's very important to keep that letter at all times. Now, there are a couple of ways to expedite the process. That is, the city of Chicago, we recognize outside certification, but there are only 2 agencies that we do recognize, which is the Women's Business Development Center and the Chicago Minority Supplier Development Council. If you're certified through them, we allow you to fill out an outside certification. The benefits of an outside certification are that we require a lot less information because we are depending on these outside agencies to have thoroughly reviewed most of the information that we normally request. Now, an outside certification, even though it says that it's an expedited process, it still goes through our same intake and review process, but I mean, in a sense, if we are receiving less documents, it's going to take us less time to review it, right? Now, I spoke about getting a 5-year letter, right? And earlier I mentioned the annual no change affidavit. Your 5-year letter will outline the date that you have to submit a no change affidavit every year. This is very important because even though you received a 5-year certification letter, it does not automatically guarantee that you're in good standings or up to date. By submitting your no change affidavit, you are you're notifying us that nothing in your organization has changed. And if it has, then we will take into account during the no change affidavit, that's when you're going to present it to us. But if there are any material changes, the letter will outline that you need to submit those material changes to the city, even if you don't have an upcoming no change affidavit. So for instance, if I submit my no change affidavit in January, and in May, I sell 20% of my company to someone else, which is a change in ownership. It is my responsibility to submit the change in ownership in May to the city of Chicago. Okay, so keep that in mind because that is premise for decertification if it is not reported at its due time. And normally the letters say that within 10 business days of the change, that's when we require you to notify us. And every 5 years you will have to submit again a recertification. The recertification is going to be very similar to the new application that you submitted in the beginning, requiring all of the documents. If you are submitting an outside application for your new certification, please note that when it comes time for your 5-year recertification, you do have to go through the entire process. You can no longer just submit partial information. You have to submit all information. Okay. So now let's talk about expansions. Every business goes through growing pains and opportunities present themselves to a business at any time. So let's use this as an example. I certify my firm with X, Y, and Z codes because this is what I'm doing in the beginning. But over 2 years of business, I develop a different skill, and now I'm getting a lot of work in a different type of industry or code. I can seek what's called an expansion request. An expansion request is pretty much a business asking for us to review new codes that I want or any owner of a firm wants added to their certification. For this, you're going to have to submit your request on a company letterhead, include the added categories from the North American Industry Classification Code System, and you're going to have to include any new licenses that may be required, any new insurance that may be required, and most importantly, provide us copy of future or present contracts in that industry. Again, earlier I talked about how providing contracts is the easiest way for us to determine whether you can or cannot do the job the job that the NACES code requires. An expansion request, that's one of the most important requirements, okay? So here's a list of some of the sister agencies that we were talking about earlier that accept our certification. CPS, Chicago Park District, Public Building Commission, Chicago Housing Authority, Chicago CTA, City Colleges, Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. So all of these agencies handle their own procurement and their own contracts, but they accept our certification. Now this is the best part for you guys. How to avoid getting a denial letter. The top 10 reasons. Unsustainable or questionable ownership and control. So if you're applying for certification, it is very, very important that you are, without any doubt, the person that is controlling and running this business, especially if you are the qualifying member for certification. Okay? A lot of times, business opportunities come to all of us. And we may jump on the opportunity to start a business that we have limited knowledge in, and we may be successful, but for certification purposes, if you have limited knowledge in an industry and you're the majority owner and the qualifying owner of this firm, you will not be certifiable, okay? And unclear description of critical functions and who is responsible. So during the application and our site visits and our evaluation, we're going to take a look at every aspect of your business and how you run the business, okay? During this, we want to make sure that you as a qualifying owner are indeed on top of all of these areas of functions of your business. Just to give you a few examples of critical areas, it would be like who decides what projects to bid on, who does the estimating, who determines the prices for your firm. It is very important that the qualifying owner has a control of all of these functions on their day-to-day operations. Now, the company cannot sustain where startup funds or expansion capital came from. Sometimes you have businesses that were incorporated back in 1976. So is it going to be easy to go back that far and get a copy of the check that you used to open up or start your business? Probably going to be a little bit hard. But for newer firms, it's very important that we're able to track how the startup money to open up this business or where this money came from, okay? This is used to determine that ownership and control as well. Outside secondary employment takes the majority of the MW, BE, BEPD, DBE enterprises time on each day. So Francisco Nunez, I'm going to start my construction company, right? And it's been in operation for a year and a half. But then I apply for certification, and then they ask me, well, where do you work? Well, I work for XYZ construction company. Well, how often do you work? I'm like, well, I'm a full-time employee. So if I'm a full-time employee for XYZ company, how am I running Francisco Nunez Construction? So that is very important when it comes to certification. Now, say for instance, I have a 9-to-5, right? And then I run a consulting business. For my consulting business, I do after work. See, so everything, all of this secondary employment is very reliant on the industry that you're seeking certification. So there are times where, you have to have a job to pay the bills, right? And to survive and to live. The city completely understands that. But there are certain industries and certain classifications in certification where it could be detrimental, and it can be the cost to deny certification. Okay. Again, the company is not located within the 6-county region, and the main reason why sometimes this happens is say I have a company with 1,000 employees, and out of those 1,000 employees, 400 of them work in the 6-county region and 600 work outside. So 60% of my employees are working outside the 6-county regions, therefore I'm not eligible for certification. Earlier, I referred to requesting information from a certification officer. If we request information, we give you a specific amount of time to respond to it. So say, for instance, I send a request for information to any of you, and you guys decide that you guys, the amount of time I'm giving you is not enough, that is completely okay. All you have to do is give us a call and let us know, hey, I got your request for information, but it's going to take me longer than 15 days to do this. Can you give me 30 days? And then, 90% of the time, certification officers are going to say yes. We make a note of it in our communications, and then that way there's a record that you reached out to us asking for an extension. And that's okay, but sometimes we don't get a response at all. And that will be cause for denial or for us to just close your application. Inconsistencies with applicant firm name among various documents. So for instance, I'm seeking certification for Francisco Nunez Incorporated, right? But then on some of my documents, I have Francisco Nunez LLC. On others, it's incorporated. Inconsistencies like those are an automatic cause for denial for various reasons, and we don't need to get into details about it, but just make sure that whenever you're seeking certification, you are using your correct structure and remain consistent throughout the application process. Problem with contracts, they're missing, incomplete, not signed, and executed by qualifying owners, or have no corresponding proof of payment. So we've touched on this issue a couple of times already in this presentation, the importance of providing contracts. When you provide contracts, it's helpful for you to provide an invoice or a paid receipt with a copy of the check you received from the company that hired you. All of that makes your application much stronger because it proves that these contracts are indeed valid and they were actually executed and the job was done. Now also be sure that it's also important that it stays consistent with everything you're writing on your application, because in your application they're going to ask you about your contracts. So make sure that you stay consistent with what you're putting on your application and what you're submitting. Everything has to be. And if your business is doing everything by the book, you should never have a problem doing none of this. All of this should be just standard. Okay? Required documents are not attached, or no explanation is given to why the documents are not available. So for non-construction companies, we require 3 years of corporate taxes. We require them, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But let's say, for instance, you're a startup company that's only been in business 2 years, but you write a note saying, we incorporated in 2012 or in 2013, so we only have 2013, 2014 taxes. There's no record of this company in existence in 2011 or 2012, then we all understand that. Because in essence, to apply for certification, you can be a startup company, and you can incorporate yesterday and apply today. That's not a problem. As long as you provide an explanation on why some of these documents are not available, that's good enough for us. And it leads me to the next one. 3 years of tax returns were not submitted and signed. A lot of times people will send us their tax returns, but they're not signed. Or, sometimes we won't sign them because we're e-filing, but send us the front page showing that you e-filed. If you e-filed, that's fine. Okay, if you have questions regarding certification, where do you go? Well, you can always come visit us at City Hall. We are 121 North LaSalle, and come visit us at room 806. That's the Department of Procurement. You could ask for a certification officer to come out and talk to you. Or more practical for most of you, you could give us a call at our general line number, which is 312-744-4900. just know that when you call to ask us questions about certification, we are more than happy to help you with any questions. But we cannot and we will not advise on what to do in a certain, if you have a question about where in terms our answer would be advising you on how to do something, we cannot do that. That is a business decision that you guys need to make, and all certification officers will tell you that unfortunately we cannot answer that question for you. But if it's a general question about certification, we will all be very glad to help. If you need help filling out your application, I know that there's a lot of chambers of commerce and assist agencies outside. Again, we cannot recommend any of them because we don't want anyone to come back and say, well, you know, the city recommended them and they did a bad job, I didn't get certified, so we're not going to recommend, but the help is out there. And if you guys look hard enough, you guys will find someone that'll be able to assist you. Okay, so now we have time for questions. The state of Illinois, you said? So the question is, the Illinois Chamber of Commerce has a women and minority-owned business, female and minority-owned business enterprise certification. Is it the same as ours? No. I'll let you know that the city of Chicago only recognizes our own certification and Cook County certification. So if you're certified as a woman-owned or a minority-owned with the state of Illinois, you cannot use that certification to bid on city contracts, or our sister agencies won't use it either. So we only accept Cook County and City of Chicago. Furthermore, I'll expand a little bit more. If you're certified with the City of Chicago, Cook County will also accept our certification. So you don't need to be certified with both Cook County and City of Chicago. You certify with one or the other. And whoever you choose to certify with, it's a decision that you guys will make. Currently, we do have some firms that are duly certified, but the city and Cook County are working together to narrow it down to one host agency. So the other certification will be put on a dormant status because it will no longer be needed. Question? You got a question? The question was, do we do criminal or credit checks? We do not do, that's not part of our certification procedures. We do not do credit checks or criminal background checks. Yes. Okay, so the question is, what is the earning thresholds for someone seeking certification? Okay, so this question kind of hits onto the personal net worth of a firm. Our regulations state specifically on personal net worth, but just so you know, any personal net worth only applies to construction firms for the most part. They do apply to everyone in particular, but they're more lax on the non-construction side. If construction firms, the personal net worth, somebody can't be over, um, $2.4 million. If they're worth over $2.4 million, they will exceed our threshold, so they won't be certifiable. Okay, so the question is more on what is the cap that other employees in the company can have in order for them not to have to submit W-2. Okay, so yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. So the question really is, if you have to submit W-2s for all of your employees. At what point do you not submit a W-2 for an employee? Best practice is just submit a W-2 for all your employees. I mean, it doesn't hurt the application. And I mean, if you're having a lot of trouble, like generating a W-2 for someone that made $600 that year in your firm, it's not going to be detrimental or not going to be cause for you to not be certified. But if you can, it's better to just submit all of them. Okay, 1099s. The 1099s are very important that you submit if you have 1099s, because typically a 1099 you're going to give to a contractor or a non-employee, a contracted employee, right? Any and all 1099s should be submitted, regardless of the amount of money you paid them. The question is, why is it so important to submit 1099s? 1099s will give us a good understanding of your day-to-day operations as well. It helps us really see how your business runs as a whole. Now, with employees, we understand that with employees, especially, when it's, a low-skill position, we understand that turnover may be a little bit more, and, there might be somebody working there for 3 weeks or a month, and then it doesn't work out, someone else comes to replace them, things like that. But a 1099, which is a contract that you're awarding someone or a different company, shows that you're seeking a more of a professional, more responsibility kind of contract, kind of responsibility to anyone or any entity. Does that answer your question? No, it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just it helps us develop the real picture of how your business operates. When it comes to contractors or 1099s, subcontractors, there are some industries where this is the norm. So, for instance, if I'm an engineer and I have an engineering firm, and it's me and I hire 2 other engineers, there's 3 engineers. But then all of a sudden I get an opportunity for a huge project and I win that project because I'm capable of getting that project. Does that mean I'm going to go hire 8 more engineers? It's very difficult to find 8 engineers to just come hire for a project. So it is normal for them to seek to subcontract part of the award. So it all depends again on industry. Always keep that in mind. Every single application is being reviewed for basic requirements and industry standards. So what may apply in one industry may not apply in another. And that's a very good example there with the engineering and contracting. Now, if a construction company who specializes in plumbing, for instance, is subcontracting 90% of their plumbing work to a different plumbing company, now that can be an issue, right? Because if you're a plumbing company, then why are you subcontracting to a different plumbing company? But in that type of industry with plumbing, if you're a union shop, you can always call the union hall and ask for more plumbers for temporary work, because that's standard industry practice. good. Okay, so the question is, her office is home-based. If a site visit is needed, do they come to your home? No. So depending on what you're doing, so say for, depending on what you're doing, a site visit might not even be necessary. And if you're using your home as the home office, most of the times you really don't, you have a computer and a desk and a file cabinet there. So we're not gonna meet there. If we need to meet with you and do an interview, 90% of the time the certification officer or someone else will meet you somewhere else, or maybe at a job site, or things like that. But I mean, most home-based operations are non-construction anyway, so they're not non-trucking, not suppliers. So yeah. Right, so like you said, if everything's in the field, we can meet you out in the field. That's not a problem. So the question is, I have they're gathering up all the documents, and some of them are in hard copy, others are in PDFs. Do we have to upload everything to the application? Preferably, yes. We want everything to be uploaded to the application. And again, like I said, beginning January 1st, we're going to strongly encourage everyone to submit electronic applications. Electronic applications is easier for everyone, even for you, because it timestamps everything and it proves that you submitted what you said you submitted. A lot of times when you submit paper hard copies, so much paperwork goes through our office, so much paperwork goes through the firm's office. A lot of misunderstandings can happen. The firm may say, I sent it in, and we're like, we never received it. Who's right and who's wrong? You never know. But if you submit it electronically, it's always going to be there. Yes, so all the tax forms, everything. If you can scan them and upload them, that's the best way to do it. Yes. Okay, so the question is, once you start an application, how long do you have before you lose it or you have to complete it? So initially it gives you 2 months to complete it, but say for instance, if you're at a month and a half and you still are not completely done, or you don't think you're gonna finish within the 2-month period, give us a call, and any certification officer can and will extend your application. So that way you don't lose all the information that you've already uploaded. Any other questions? So the question is, in her particular case, she's an S corp, so she doesn't conduct annual meetings and keep minutes and things like that. Can she explain it? Like, it depends. I mean, explaining everything is the most important thing. At least give us an explanation on why you don't have the thing, and then the certification officer will determine whether, well, that makes sense, or I understand, so they won't have it. But again, even though I know you're by yourself, it's still always best business practice to even just do it, even though it's just you. I mean, technically, you're not gonna have a meeting, right, and like use a gavel and all that. But you still can have the legal documents saying that, there are no changes and there's nothing to report at the time. And it's good for your own records, in the long term. Okay. So what's the proof of initial contribution? I spoke about this a little bit earlier. I don't know how long you've been incorporated, and sometimes it's easier than other times. So for instance, if I started a company back in 2012 and I used $1,000 out of my checking account, I wrote a check to Francisco Nunez Incorporated, and that's how I opened my bank account. That's how I can prove that initial capital contribution. A check or a check, anything and everything that was given by the owner to begin this company. A lot of times too, keep in mind, a lot of times we acquire these companies, so we buy them from someone else. So the purchase agreement, the promissory note, whatever you have that proves that you yourself bought and paid for this business is what we're asking for when it comes to initial contributions. Well, the question is, her boss bought the business from someone else. What if she can't find the actual check? Okay, so say the actual physical check you can't find. Well, you can always go to the bank of the bank account that you used to pay for it. You can always go do that, but also you'll also have legal documents changing the ownership. But it's very important. It is important to provide where the capital came from, because it just shows that there was no outside contributions. So, for instance, say for instance, if I have my father-in-law who is a non-qualifying individual, he says, "Hey, Francisco, I'm going to give you $200,000 so you can buy this business," and then he writes the check to the name and he buys the business. Everything gets transferred to mine. That's how we will be able to determine, like, oh, well, hold on, he didn't pay for this business, someone else did. So that's why it is so important to try to get that. For new applications, I mean, now, once you get it once, you'll have it forever. But with this, we're going to end the stream online. And if you have any questions after this, feel free to stick around and I'll answer any questions. So once again, the Department of Procurement Services would like to thank you for coming to our How to Become Certified workshop. You can find the PowerPoint online, and you can follow us on this channel. And we'll hope everything works out for you. Thank you.